want to welcome everyone to our Activate Presents webinar. My name is Jeff Edmonds, and I am the Consulting Partner Manager here at Activate. Today's webinar, entitled From Call to Close, 4 Indispensable Steps for Any Software Consultant. It's for any QuickBooks or software consultant. We're going to go over the 4 critical areas that consultants need to consider when they encounter a prospect looking for a solution. So although I'm with Activate, today's webinar is not Activate specific. Rather, it's a webinar for anyone in the consulting business. Now that said, Activate is the maker of world-class inventory management software. If you know someone that's outgrowing QuickBooks inventory, or they need a solution, or if you want to get involved as one of our consulting partners, please go to our website, activate.com, or shoot me an email at jeff.edmonds@activate.com. Today's presenter is Keith Fileccia from Mendelson Consulting. So good afternoon, Keith. Thanks for being here today. How are you?
I am doing absolutely fantastic and looking forward to sharing some of the information that I've gathered over the years on how to, as I like to put it, herd the cats.
Awesome. Great. Hey, before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about you and Mendelson Consulting?
Absolutely. I have a sales background that spans more years than I'd like to admit. I spent a decade at Intuit in leadership over there, so I've got some great knowledge on how Intuit operates and actually have the ability to translate Intuit ease into a core common language that everyone can understand. I work for Mendelson Consulting. Everyone on that's joined us probably has heard the name Mario Nogrodsky at some point in time in their consulting life. We tend to teach at all the large national conferences. Mendelson Consulting has 15 consultants on staff. We do everything that could possibly have anything to do with QuickBooks and train our staff so they have levels of expertise in various areas. One of our strengths is inventory control, and that's where our relationship with Activate flourishes.
Awesome. Okay, so we're excited to get going, so I'm going to let you take it from here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeff. From call to close, it's great to see some of the names are very, very familiar to me. We've met or talked at some point or time, but you know, there's always a struggle in our community. When we get the call from the client, we need to be able to manage them from that first phone call through to the end of it. I can tell you, I can guarantee you that there are folks on this call today that will get a call from a client. They will spend hours figuring out what the client needs, and then the client will disappear, go somewhere else, find somebody else that's $10 cheaper, or try and do it on their own. And that time is not recoverable. As consultants, our inventory to sell is actually time, and we're like a hotel. If the room doesn't get sold tonight, I can't go back in time and sell that room. So we absolutely and positively want to be able to sell that room and keep it maximized and as profitable for us as possible. Because unless somebody out there has won the lottery, this isn't our hobby. So today we're going to talk about everything from the initial call from the client straight through to signing them and just some introduction into managing a project, things that you need to take note of as you go through the process in order to understand what type of individual or entity that you're dealing with. So our first phase is discovery. This is when the phone rings. At that point in time, whenever I get a call, I have never received a call from a client that says, things are absolutely great. Can you come in and make them greater? There's always what I call a burning platform. There's a reason that that client has picked up the phone and that they are reaching out for a solution. So the first thing that we need to do, and the first thing I find out, is understanding why they're on the phone with me and giving them confidence that they're in the right hands, that I'm the one or that we're the organization that can help them, and I need to understand the call driver is. Now, here's my definition of sales. You can write this down. I'll take a moment. We'll post this on websites. But my definition of sales is getting the customer what they need, not what they want. But never lose sight of the call driver. So what that means is there's something going on that got them on the phone, but that might not be their solution. So I had a client that called the other day because he had a problem using TPI to import, Bay State's Transaction Pro Importer. He was using that to import some spreadsheets into QuickBooks. As I talked to him, I found out that he was spending both Saturday and Sunday every week just doing his books. That's a major clue to me that there is something going on, that he's not maximizing his use of QuickBooks, that he would have to spend 12 or 13 hours over the weekend just to try and get caught up. So we shifted the conversation to his use of QuickBooks and how he was using it and how we could best help him. Put the Transaction Pro Importer call driver on the back burner, but really did not lose sight of that. The conversation kind of went along the lines of, I understand that you want to use this, but let's make sure that we're using QuickBooks correctly and that we're bringing the information in the way it needs to be so that you can get at least one day back over the weekend instead of doing books. It's funny, most people I talk to, most business owners, spend an inordinate amount of time doing financial bookkeeping, order or entry, and that's not why they got into business. Folks got into business because they love detailing cars or that they love, selling Christmas trees. But there's this shift that happens as business grows where the administrative side becomes more overwhelming and it then stops them from doing what they love. Fortunately, we have a community, such as all of us that are on the call right now, that can go out and help folks streamline operations to make it as efficient as possible. So during the discovery phase, I keep some goals in mind while I'm on the phone. I want to get some basic information about the business, what they do, how they got into business, what are their sales channels, understanding the call driver, why are you on the phone with me, how big a deal is this, what is your current software environment. How often do we reach out to a client that is using QuickBooks Pro and he's trying to track orders, and of course QuickBooks Pro doesn't have the capability of tracking sales orders, so they're going right to invoice. There's no control on what he owes customers, he or she owes customers, things like that. So having that understanding of that software environment is essential. And then build their confidence in you. Make sure that they know that you understand their business, you understand how they get their customers, you understand where they get their item. This is not about selling a service at this point. This is about selling yourself. And it's absolutely critical in order to move forward. So in the discovery phase, what I'm looking for is what type of business and a high-level understanding. And that's going to lead you into multiple questions. If I am a reseller of products, so I'm buying and selling, am I buying domestically? If I'm buying domestically, what kind of costs are involved in that? Am I buying overseas? Do I have landed costs I have to deal with? How am I selling? Where are the customers coming from? Is it a web-based approach? Is it multi-channel? Are they using Amazon? Is it a storefront? Do they have salespeople? And what isn't working? Beyond the call driver, you'll often find out that, there's something else not working in their system. And you start developing kind of an idea of what the customer really needs as opposed to what they're calling for. I will tell you this, and everyone on this call has experienced this. You talk to the customer and you say, yeah, I think that Activate is the right solution for you. It's got some things just based on this 30-minute conversation that I think would be really good. And next thing you know, they've logged into Activate's website, they've downloaded the trial, and they are now researching it on their own. Oftentimes, they're not going to do that well. So I never offer a solution. I'll say things like, I have some ideas, I think we can help you, or I know we can help you, but I never ever on that call offer a solution. I've never, when I'm in those moments of weakness, when I actually say, hey, this could work, I have never had the customer not reach out to that vendor and start looking at it themselves. So as you're going through the discovery phase, you leave the customer with the knowledge that you understand their business and high-level needs. So remember, the person you're talking to has specific needs to them, to that person on the phone. You also want them to know that you have their best interest at heart. This is an interesting conversation. We are an Activate Gold partner, but Activate is not the only inventory solution that we offer. Everything that we do is customer back. It's getting the right solution for the right customer. And what I love about the guys at Activate is the sales reps will actually say to a customer, you know what, we're not the right solution. You need to look at alternatives. That's a great scenario to be in, because I always say, you know, how can you tell when a salesperson's lying? It's because their lips are moving. And always beware of a salesperson that says yes to everything. And most important is let them be confident that you can solve their problems. You've experienced it, you've lived it, you've been there, you've done that, you've bought the T-shirt, wore out the T-shirt, but you can absolutely come in and solve a multitude of problems as opposed to that original call driver. So the goal as we go through this discovery phase, and this can last anywhere from 15 minutes to, I've had them go 2 hours going through this discovery phase. The goal of the call is to get the customer to buy into a full needs assessment. We want to be able to come in and find out what's going on in the organization. We want to be able to make suggestions, and we want to have positive change for the customer. There's no one that got into our business as a consultant that wants to do it simply because they love Transaction Pro Importer and that's all they ever want to do, or they love Activate, that's all they ever want to do. Every one of us on this call have a desire to see customers succeed. We have a desire to build relationships with those customers. Rarely do we have a customer that's what I would call one and done. They call us for a thing, and then we never hear from them again. Oftentimes they'll come back as their business grows and ask additional questions or seek additional assistance. You know, for those of us that have been around for several decades, the interesting thing is, you know, we've seen Intuit come from the kind of the basic and the pro world. I was at Intuit when Premier was released. When I started in the Intuit sales channel, we were allowed to sell pro, basic, and support. We couldn't sell payroll. There was no payments back then. And over time, every one of us knows that QuickBooks has become a solution that goes beyond the I got QuickBooks because my accountant and the IRS told me I have to with the right add-ons, we can turn QuickBooks into an ERP solution that will rival the Great Plains, the Dynamics, the NetSuites, the Epicors, the SAP Business One type of environments at a fraction of the cost. And we've seen over the, as the economy goes up and down, we've seen folks come out of those environments because of the annual charges are ridiculous, or it's just outside of their budget, or they bought it because they wanted a feature and it never got implemented. So we've seen people coming downstream, as well as we've seen the current QuickBooks customer base move upstream and extend the capabilities. The clients we talk to are not using it to produce a file for their accountant and for the IRS. They're making day-to-day business decisions based upon the information that's contained within the software. So once we've gone through this discovery phase, now I know a little bit about the business. I've built the confidence in the customer that we can absolutely help them. And the big question that's been plaguing us is, when does the meter start running? When should I start charging a customer for my service? Because what we have to sell is knowledge. No one's going to make a living selling QuickBooks Pro, Premier, or Enterprise. I'm not going to put my kids through college on my Intuit sales. It is specifically the knowledge that we have, our experiences, that will help customers move forward. That is our sellable commodity. Knowledge and time, that's all we got. So the meter starts running for me the moment that their solution is beyond a simple 30-minute call, and I think that this is billable. We absolutely bill for this. So the needs assessment, it's different than discovery. The needs assessment is a deeper dive. So at this point, we're going to start developing the criteria for any proposed system, as well as the project scope. Now, there are lots of organizations and lots of people, project managers, that will go out and do this type of research, and they charge. This is not a free service. No one does this because they enjoy it so much that they don't really need to make a living. So we're going to give them a proposal. We're going to give them the scope of a project, and we're going to give them that solution. So as we develop the project scope, we need to know what their goals are as an organization. Oftentimes, folks live in the now, so they might call in. I had a client that does a lot of importing. And having gone through the whole needs assessment and the scope development, one of the things that I found out is that they had their core business where they were just selling to large hotel chains, Walmarts, that type of thing. But part of the world and part of their future development was that they wanted to have a web store. So as we're looking at solutions, it wasn't an immediate need, but it was a long-term goal, possibly short-term. So they knew that they had to go multi-channel. There's no one here that doesn't have a client that hasn't looked at alternative channels. We're living in a world where the web is such a huge presence. People do a lot of research on the web. It's changed the way we shop and buy, that every business has got to look at it. So I remember as we were going through the assessment, we had two different solutions that both met today's needs. And as we went through it, one of the two solutions, which just strangely happened to be Activate, has a web integration, whereas the other one didn't have a direct web integration. So, when we were going through the assessment and sitting down with the decision makers within the organization, that was a factor. Not for today, but hey, going forward, you can add this on with Activate's modular approach. So that's one of the reasons that they chose Activate as their solution. The business that folks are doing today is not going to be the same way they're doing it in 10 years. I think one of the most interesting comments that I've ever heard came from my daughter's principal, who said the challenge that they have as educators is to prepare the kids for jobs that don't exist. 5 years ago, would anyone have thought that this Facebook thing would have become a tool for business, that social media was going to become so critical that organizations have to hire staff to monitor it? I still don't tweet, but apparently, it's a big thing between tweeting and Instagramming and Facebooking. This is a huge marketing. 10 years ago, we didn't have DVRs that would fast forward through commercials. Today, large companies are doing what's called product placement inside of television shows because they know people are no longer watching the commercials. So if you've ever watched a show where they've stopped and said, hey, how do you think of my Ford Escort? Look at all the features it has. That is product placement. It's a very, very different world. So our clients need to move and change, as do we. So we want to develop the scope. Once you've captured the needs of the person from the initial call, you don't know the needs of the rest of the organization. So every time I talk to somebody on the phone, it's what's impacting them. But I might be talking to the accountant or the accounting staff. All they care about is that things reconcile, that valuations are correct, but they don't know what the needs of the sales department are. And I have seen time and again where the client will get one person who will make a great decision for them, but a horrible decision for the rest of the organization. Going back, just showing my age a little bit, I remember when a little program called ACPAC was released. Fantastic program for accountants, but from a day-to-day client operation basis, it's probably not the best solution on the market. So we want to go through, we want to capture the needs of the rest of the organization, everyone from the warehouse manager to the sales department to accounting staff to the principals of the organization. The client you're talking to doesn't know what they don't know. If they knew what they knew, they wouldn't be on the phone with you. So we really need to find out the greater needs of the organization. I can't make a recommendation to a client unless I'm aware of all their needs. And like I said, if they knew the answer, they wouldn't be talking to you right now. So the way we do a needs assessment is we interview stakeholders in the organization. Like I said, sales, marketing, purchasing, order entry, customer service, warehouse and production staff, accounting, leadership, the list goes on and on. But the trick is to be able to take those individual needs and gather it into a solution that is going to drive everyone. It's going to be the organizational solution as opposed to the individual solution. When we do this, I'm looking for an output that's really two lists. Any system must have these things. And here's the list of nice-to-haves. So the warehouse manager might say, it would be really nice if we could walk around and scan orders and pick them at will. Everyone knows that in QuickBooks Enterprise Solutions with advanced inventory, you actually have the capability of doing barcoding. This is one of the most common conversations I have when I get to the warehouse state. Well, I can get advanced inventory and I can have barcode scanning. Yes, technically you can. But what I find is in a warehouse environment, it's a mobile computer, one of those guns like you'd see somebody walking around Walmart with, is what they actually need, where they can pull up an order, they can scan it to make sure that we have accurate items coming in and going out, and you don't want to have to lug a laptop or a computer on a roller around because that's the way the Intuit offering is. Barcodes with Intuit are very, very basic. I can have a barcode number. I can take Enterprise, kind of turn it into a retail thing where I stand in front of the computer and just scan items that folks that are bringing up. But it's not a warehouse solution. As we go through this, the only solutions that we'll recommend are ones that meet the minimum must-have. And we spend a lot of time helping the clients develop the lists. We've had clients go out, we've got one right now, where their list was 280 items. And things, I'd had this conversation about the must-haves and nice-to-haves. He had labeled them like that, but we started seeing duplicates. So the same item was on the list twice, and in one place it was a must-have, in another place it was a nice-to-have. So we had to actually pare down the list and figure out really what were the must-haves. So the client's written me a check. I charge for this, and these needs assessments, depending on the complexity and the size of the organization, can really run anywhere from half a day to 3 days. If it's a large organization, don't sell yourself short on this stuff. Come in and talk to individuals, make notes, and don't forget, there's going to be time to write the proposal or the recommendation. You can plan on anywhere from 4 hours to, like I said, 24 hours to capture the needs of the organization. What does he get? He's written me a check. Obviously, it's not just because I'm really nice. There's got to be something that the customer gets. There is a tangible output. They do have the must-have, nice-to-have list. I can take this. They can now make a better decision. They've got now a recommendation on solution that the client will need to invest in. Rather than Googling, QuickBooks inventory add-on and getting, a list of 30. I talked to a client the other day that used an online service. I can't remember the name of it, but he put in some criteria and it came back and said NetSuite, Great Plains, and it was really this mid-market solution. A lot of clients out there don't realize today with the power of the add-ons how far they can take QuickBooks capability. These clients that we're talking to, if he had gone with their recommendation, he would have been into it for 6 figures, but he decided that wasn't right. And we've talked to a lot of folks over the years that have spent months trying to come up with their own solution that have eventually come to us, and in a matter of a couple of weeks, we're able to get them on the right track because we have this knowledge of what's out there, what connects to QuickBooks, how it works. Trying to build a bridge by yourself without an engineering degree doesn't help anyone. And if you do that, please let me know what bridge it is, because I certainly don't want to drive on it unless you have an engineering degree. So the customer is going to have the information now to make a better decision. We don't make decisions for our clients, we make recommendations. And we point that out. Now, understand this as a consultant. The moment you make a recommendation, I can't tell you how many times I've heard, well, you recommended it, so this is, you have to support it. Well, no, that's not the way it works. I make recommendations. You guys make decisions. We just help folks make decisions. Okay, now, we know what the customer gets. He gets that tangible list. He gets to make a better decision. He gets a couple of recommendations. And again, as much as I love the folks at Activate, they're not always the solution that I recommend. There are lots of add-ons out there that have different strengths and different weaknesses. I can't tell you that we recommend Activate 100% of the time, because there are cases in which we would recommend something else. But what do you get? We get money for the time we've invested in the client. Like I said at the beginning of the call, I bet you every one of you have spent hours with a customer or with a prospect and walked away with nothing but burned time. Time that you could have used to help a different customer or a billing client. The other thing that you get is a much better scope of the project. I can tell you unequivocally that I've never had a customer go through this and then say, oh, well, we've got it from here. We don't need any consulting from you for the implementation. We don't need any training from you. We got this. I've never had anyone take the list and shop. Let's find the cheapest consultant on the planet that can implement this. Once you're so ingrained at this point that if the project goes ahead or when the project goes ahead, you're going to be their go-to person. So project scope, it's so critical. Again, every one of us on this call have at some point in time said to a client, yeah, it's going to be 4 to 8 hours. And the client hears 48 hours, but wants you to hold you to that 4 to 8 hour billing. And sometimes we have to, because we haven't gotten a tight enough scope to say, well, wait a minute, this changed, or that changed, or you added this. Customers always hear the lowest number that you throw out and never hear when they've made a change. We've got customers in the construction industry, and change orders became absolutely critical to track, because somebody would be building a house, the wife or husband would walk in and say, well, I don't like that $20 chandelier. I want you to put a $1,000 chandelier up, but I also want it at the same price. And none of us are in business to do this as our hobby. We're all in business to make money and maximize our time. This is also critical. Through the needs assessment, you'll find out who the people that are excited about the change are and who the detractors are. Those are the folks that are consciously or subconsciously going to try and sabotage it. They're the ones that always say, we've done it this way for the last 35 years, and we're going to continue to do it this way. We don't see the reason for change. This change is going to make my job harder. There's always one, and it's important to identify them right at the beginning. So, some sales tips. When you're in front of these clients, sell yourself, not the solution. I don't walk around saying Activate is the best thing since sliced bread. But I do walk around saying our organization is fantastic. We have great consultants. We have some of the best consultants in the world. Well, I have to say that because I have to. And I always let them know, you're in the right hands. I understand what's going on with your organization, and we are the ones that can help you. Always keeping in mind that the customer back thing is so important for me. Like I said, really like the folks that Activate. I've never been invited to anyone's wedding. I've never been invited to anyone's house for Thanksgiving. It's a good offering. It's a really good offering. I enjoy the product. It has a lot of strengths, but I don't walk into a customer with going, I'm going to sell them Activate. I walk in gathering the needs, and is Activate one of the solutions that'll fit? And then we'll actually go through the demo process with them and start shortening down the list of those must-haves, nice-to-haves. So again, I can't stress that enough. What we do is for the client. It's not for Activate. It's not for QuickBooks. I don't have a shelf full of QuickBooks sitting there waiting for somebody to buy it. Now that we have gone through the assessment, we've convinced them that we've got a solution. We'll actually go through the demo phase with them. And I've had demos that have lasted 2 hours, and I've had demos that have lasted 5 minutes. I remember one we were doing with a client. There was a specific need to be able to see inventory quantities directly from the sales order. And one of the solutions we looked at, you actually had to run a report to see that information. Well, this was on the must-have list. So 5 minutes in, this comes out, and I just said, well, wait a minute, what's the workaround? Well, you have to leave this screen, and you have to go out and run this report and look at the item. Oh, so I can't just click on View Product and see what's going on. No, not at all. Okay, well, I think that that's a showstopper for us. We need to, everyone gets 55 minutes of this hour back because we can't move forward. We had one where a client wanted to have invoice level discounts as well as line level discounts. One of the offerings doesn't do that. Pick one. It's one or the other. So again, that was another one where we were able to get ourselves 45 minutes back from a demo. But now you've convinced them. You've gone through the demos. Now it's time to write up the engagement letter. Back in the day, you could do a deal on a handshake. In today's world, not so much. So we will quote products. Anything that involves a level of work outside of, somebody wants to buy enterprise solutions, we send them a quote, and we process the order. Anything outside of that, if it's a large project, we'll do a proposal, and that proposal, once accepted, becomes an engagement letter. Our engagement letters have a couple of key points in it. Number one is that we won't share the financial information without written consent from the client, so I'm not going to run around telling you about how any of the businesses that we've worked with are doing. And the other line that I actually love in ours is that we can't hire anyone from you, and you can't hire anyone from us for 12 months from the date of the engagement. Because oftentimes our consultants will go in and the client will say, hey, you're the best, I want to hire you, after we've invested time and training in them. So engagement documents, purpose for the document is it's a contract. The scope is so important. This is critical because anytime there's a change, and we all know scope creep, that 4-hour project that turns into 30, we want to really define as well as we can what's going on, what we're going to offer. When we get into the project, we want to have actionable items. You need to purchase QuickBooks at this point. You need to purchase Activate. I'm working with a client right now that happens to be an Activate customer, and the first thing that needs to be in place is, strangely enough, a server. I have to have somewhere to install the software. So they're doing the server. I also need to know what their network infrastructure looks like, what their workstations look like. I don't want to be surprised later that they're running some old Pentium computer with XP and a 10 megabyte hard drive. Spell out the costs. Don't ever get surprised. Hourly rates, travel rates, what are your travel charges, per diems, hotel. I don't like to leave hotels up to clients because I personally don't like hotels that are rented by the hour. So I like to have a little bit of control of what the class of hotel, and I don't have to be 5-star. 4 is absolutely fine. If there's bulk discounts, if you prepay this many hours, we'll give you a discount for that block of time, as well as the terms such as I described earlier. What's the method of payment? Is there going to be terms with the clients? We tend to like to make everything due upon receipt. There have been large organizations we've dealt with where we'll go to net terms, but most of the time we keep a method of payment on file and let the client know that will be charged at the end of their appointment. Keeping the client informed. This is so critical. Any project that I've ever had that has gone sideways has been because the client didn't know what was going on. They didn't know what the next steps were. They didn't know where we were at in the project. We would rather over-communicate and have somebody say, hey, you're sending me too many emails. You guys are like Groupon. I get 37 emails a day. I'd rather have that complaint than the phone call with the client going, what's going on? We have been building tools to help us identify that with timelines. If we're waiting on a customer, my favorite customers that get upset are the ones that have to give us something and they take 3 weeks to do it, to give us what we need, and then expect the results the next day. So again, even managing the expectation on their end. Hey, I need this stuff from you. Once I get it, it'll take me a week to do this, and that's going to push our timeline out. And of course, getting a signature is everything. You know, a contract agreement or just that go-ahead that says, let's go. I can't tell you the number of clients that I've talked to that say, okay, I'll get you that signature tomorrow. Can we start today? Absolutely not. Until I have that approval and the contract signed, I'm not moving forward. Again, anything can change, and we want to make sure that the client is on board, and if they are that committed to the project, they'll make the signature happen, and they'll get it for us. We don't start on a hope and a prayer. Manage. We've got the signed document now. It's back in our hands. Now we've got to manage the project and the people. We've talked a little bit about scope creep, and again, there is no one in this room that has run into a client that hasn't wanted to change or something hasn't lined up. There's an uncovered need that we didn't know about early on. Anyone that does custom development, works with something like Method, knows that that's the type of stuff that you have to have the tightest scope on. People get into software, even things like Activate, where they'll look at some of the features and things that they can do that they didn't know that they can do, and they'll want to implement it. One of the most common ones that I run into would be a warehouse management, the mobile application. How long does it take me to set it up? Probably an hour, maybe 2. How long does it take me to train the guy to point the gun and the trigger? Maybe a couple more hours. How long does it take me to design the warehouse layout? Because they have no clue. Bin locations, prepare barcode labels for things that don't exist. That could be 8 to 10 hours. So when I do a mobile implementation, generally I'll quote that that's an additional 12 to 16 hours. Unless, of course, their warehouse is already laid out perfectly and everything has barcodes, then it's a much shorter project. When you find that customer that it's like that, let me know, because I actually want to meet them and shake their hand. But everyone that I've ever dealt with, it becomes warehouse management that you're doing. But if it's not in the original scope of the project, if my contract just says implement Activate, they're going to say, well, no, you said it's going to take this long to implement Activate, and we just added on these 3 things. So that's why we want to make sure that I have a way of saying to them, this change is going to result in X more hours, because if we look at the document, our conversations, our project management piece, this is not there. And this is how it's going to change. When you're dealing with people, there's always change management. You have to become the subject matter expert for these clients. I've got actually the first client that I've ever encountered where I'm convinced I will never know their products as well as I do, because they actually deal with EEG machines and doing brain stuff, and they are literally PhDs in the organization in sales. I will never know more about their product than they will. But I have other clients that I know as much, if not more, about where they buy, how they buy it, when they buy it, what their costs are in other areas. Change. You know, change is part of everyone's lives, no matter what industry you're in. We talked a little bit earlier about the fact that my kids are being trained for jobs that don't exist today. Through the decades, things are accelerating and changing at a much more rapid pace. Back in the 80s, with my dad's business, we had a mini computer that doesn't even come close to what my smartphone does today. And it's just getting faster and faster and faster. Assigning responsibility. Any project, I'll tell you, one of the things that I insist on in an Activate project is that folks practice. Practice is going to tell me what needs to change, what needs to be implemented, what forms we're going to need, what workflows need to be adjusted. I remember early on as I was starting out with Activate, walking onto a client site, and I had to fly in. And the project champion said to me, "Oh yeah, everyone's practiced, we're good to go." And I walk out to the site, and first thing I always do is I look inside of Activate, and they had 21 users. When I looked into the practice file, there were 3 sales orders that had been created and 1 purchase order. That told me that they hadn't been practicing. Now I'm going from kind of that we're flushing out things in the system and getting ready to go live to I have to train everyone in what's going on. Constant contact. Again, can't reiterate that. Over communication is always, always, always better than what's going on or people looking around the room at each other going, who's on first? The old Abbott and Costello routine. Be very, very clear about roles. Be very, very clear about what the task is, when it's expected to be done. I have no problem saying to a client, great, I need this from you. When will you have it? Oh, I'll have that for you Friday. And I have no problem picking up the phone on Thursday saying, hey, I haven't seen it yet. You're going to have that for me tomorrow. Oh, yeah, I will. And then I'll call on Friday and say, still don't got it. Oh, you'll have it before midnight. Well, okay, I can't do my thing now until Monday. If you'd gotten it to me earlier in the day, it's just managing the expectations. When you're dealing with those folks that through an organization, as they're making a change, such as implementing an Activate, it's easy to look at, oh my God, this is the way we do it. We're going to lose this. You're kidding. People can become immersed in that thought of what they're losing, and they lose sight of what they're gaining. I'll tell you, there are some differences between Activate and QuickBooks. Activate is a more rigid system when it comes to things like once you've posted a receiving voucher, you can't go in and change it like you can in QuickBooks. You can't go back to that journal entry from 18 months ago and just, change the amount. There's a whole process. But some people view that as a loss. But I can tell you, hey, remember when we first started the Activate training that you can have 37 sales orders opened at once so that you can switch between a sales order and a purchase order without closing a bunch of windows? Hey, that was a big gain. That's a big step for you guys. Your inventory is more accurate. We have actual costing. There's just so many reasons. No one buys based upon what the functionality they're going to lose. It's always the gain, and you have to keep them focused on that. Because I guarantee as you go through a project, there are going to be things that they're going to have to do differently, and that there are going to be changes to their workflow. If they get into that loss scenario, seriously, it will. I've seen more projects over the years have stopped because, okay, we've got to rethink this whole thing now. Well, wait a minute, on the needs assessment, that was a nice to have. It wasn't a big deal. Why did it become a big deal? Or did somebody get promoted that thought it was a big deal? There's so many things. And dig into the product. I said I become an expert in their business. I actually have to be immersed in the business because I've never had anyone say, hey, I just want to implement this one thing. You've never had a QuickBooks customer say, hey, I can do this with the help files and the videos on the web. Every customer that I've ever talked to, 100% could be using QuickBooks more effectively. Keep them focused on the advantage of the change. There's going to be some point in any project where a client might start second guessing, did I make the right decision on this? Because change is painful. And Activate or any of the other add-ons, if somebody tells you that it's 2 weeks from start to go live, they're delusional. I have yet to see a project, because they're large projects, like an Activate, be less than 60 to 90 days. It takes time to take advantage of all the new features that you're purchasing, to rethink your pricing levels, to rethink how you're going to do your inventory. So at some point through that painful process, the client's going to second guess themselves. It's like I have a friend who's a CPA. His wife owns a miniature store. So Bob and I spent years, literally years, bugging Cindy, telling her she needed an inventory control system because she had an electronic cash register. So finally we convinced her to go with a point-of-sale system. And I remember saying to her early on, once we implement this, you're going to hate me for about 6 months. When you say my name, it's not going to be, let's get together for dinner. It's, I want to hunt him down and kill him, because change is difficult. At the end of that, I said to her, so do you like me again? And she said, yeah, I only actually hated you for about 3 months, because then I started to see the gains in what we were doing, and I was able to make better decisions, and I found that I was moving inventory better. So I only hated you for 3 months. And be ready for future adaptations. I'll tell you, having worked for Intuit, which is the epicenter of change, everyone on this call that deals with them, I can tell you, there are times that I think Intuit just changes because no real logical reason, but it was time for change. They hadn't changed something in 3 minutes, so they need to change something. We live in a world that is constantly full of change. So just kind of in summary, as we're going through the projects, I find out what the initial needs are. I roll up the sleeves and do that billable deep dive to make sure that the decision that they're making is the right one, that we're getting them into the right solution. We do the implementation, and we manage these folks. We stay on them, making sure that everything, because anything that goes wrong in an implementation, it's going to be your fault. You're going to have to answer to it, you're going to have to explain it, but you're the one that's on the hook. And that goes back to that. You made the recommendation, and we didn't know we were going to lose this one thing. Talking them down off the ledge is often very important. So that being said, I believe, Jeff, that we're at the question and answer time.
Yeah, we've got time for about 2 questions. Let me ask this, Keith. Do you charge every client for an assessment? And what if a client doesn't want to pay for an assessment? So how do you handle that situation?
Those are 2 great questions. No, our clients love getting their credit cards out. As a matter of fact, most of them have them ready at the beginning of the call. I wish. No, we don't charge every client for an assessment. If somebody calls with a very simple need and I know the solution, hey, I'm a contractor, I'm using QuickBooks Pro, I need better control of jobs, I don't need to do an assessment on that. I know that they probably need to upgrade to Premier or Enterprise, the contractor edition. They're going to need training and job costing. They're going to need training in a couple of the nice reports like unbilled expenses by job, and I can ballpark how long that's going to take. Those ones I would never do a deep dive on. That's the hard part at the beginning of the call, is how difficult is what he's asking, and what have I uncovered in that discovery stage. And I'll tell you, if it's somebody that wants to gain more control over their inventory, that inventory is a mess, and they're not willing to shell out, a couple $1,000s for the implementation or for the assessment, they'll never spend the money on Activate. I've gotten a couple of leads of late from Intuit. One of them I remember very, very clearly. They bought a factory in China, spent a lot of money on it. They needed a manufacturing program to help them determine what they needed, when they needed, why they needed it. And they had a $4,000 budget with 30 users. Their budget didn't cover me getting out of bed in the morning. It didn't even cover the enterprise solutions. So, at that point I had to say, well, with a $4,000 budget, there's not a lot I can do. Yeah, I can't even sell you the software. So that's the kind of scenarios that we run into.
Last question. So how do you handle people who aren't pulling their weight in an implementation? So somebody wants to just drop anchor and say, hey, I've been doing it this way for years. You're wanting to change things. How do you handle that person?
I absolutely just throw them under the bus with the owner. No, I'm kidding. The first thing that I always do is there's always an underlining reason why people are resistant to change. And generally it's because they don't see the benefit of the change. So I'll spend time with individuals. As a leader at Intuit, one of the things that my staff got used to was I would deliver the what we were doing, but I'd also deliver why and what the gains were going to be. And I think in 10 years, there was only one time I had to say to a senior leader, I'm not going to deliver that message because I don't believe the message. it's getting to the underlining, why are you resistant? And there are going to be those occasions where you're going to have to escalate and go into, the project champion or the owner and say, hey, this is a roadblock and it's got to be dealt with. This person is, not doing the things that they need to do. It's never my first step. It's always my last, if I can't get them to see why. And all of us have met those people on a project that, they're supposed to do an AR cleanup and they're not applying payments to the invoices. And then the owner's going, well, why is my AR aging summary or detail, why is it 53 pages? So you always get those people.
Gotcha. Okay. Hey, well, looks like we're about out of time today. Thanks again, Keith, for being here. We really appreciate everything you had to say. Let me say one thing before we close. Our next installment of Activate Presents, it'll be in early November. So please be sure to watch for the announcement. It'll be coming out a few weeks prior. And next time, we're actually going to pick up where Keith left off. So we're actually going to start with the first engagement, and it's going to be basically the implementation process from the start through go live. And she's going to take us through that whole process step by step, so it'll be real exciting. So if you have any other questions or want to contact me, my email address is jeff.edmonds@activate.com. Thanks again for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Everyone have a fantastic day.